Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are premiering. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patreon, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Melby Styles, Troy Shuka, Bo Snail, Joseph Pizarro, Samson, Maris, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Lost Cat FE, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Mike, Muted, Dick Earth Skeptic, NA Literalist, Maria Neelands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Rob H, The Real Gabster, Windrider, Liam Nedrick, Abraham Mohammed, Naibai, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic 936, Life is Short, Fireball X, FlatEarthChannel.com, Texas Mike, Edwin Johnson, Kirsten Smith, and David Wayne Foster. So a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Also below this video, there is a link to get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. With that, I'm going to hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their conversation while I set up for today's live show.
Steve? Can anybody hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Neil. Hello.
Steve can't, unless he's deaf. Must be something going on with Discord.
I think he's just not in front of his mic or he's doing something or whatever. Came off mute, said hello, muttered a few words and then disappeared. 10th man just joined and disappeared also.
What's up, man?
There you go. Go on, George.
That wasn't me. I don't know who said that.
George. Gonna be one of those days. I can just sense it.
See what happens when you take one day off? Everything goes crazy.
One day off and everything goes to
Once
shit.
you know how the trick works, the magic doesn't work on you anymore.
That's correct. Talking about the Mars landing, I can only assume that's what you're talking about. You people have been getting in touch with me via email going,
Anyway, Nathan is back. That's good news.
oh, well, thank you very much. People have been saying all these NASA fanboys are going on and on about how they've done a wonderful job and, you know, this needs addressing. And I don't want to go through the list of things that people have said I should be looking at, but ultimately people are saying this is so crazy that they think this is good. I thought to myself, well, I'm never going to look at any of them because the magic trick doesn't work on me. And the magic trick is ruined when you know one key detail, how the trick works, where the trapdoor is. And in this instance, space being fake, a second law of thermodynamics violation, sky vacuum, gas we are breathing would have filled, leaving us with no air to breathe. We'd all be dead if the sky was a vacuum. That bit of the magic trick, once you know it, it's like, what do? Do you go through the list? Well, can you debunk this star picture of the stars taken from the pictures, the reference of the lunar rover? It doesn't quite do what it's supposed to do. Okay. They've claimed to travel to this claimed to be rock in the sky through a vacuum. We'd all be dead if that story was true. So therefore, whatever they're presenting as pictures of stars from the surface of a claimed to be rock in a sky vacuum, it's automatically fake. And you could
Correct.
You just go down the list, right? What else do people get asked about? Well, what about the landing itself? Something about the parachute. I've heard somebody asking me about. What about the parachute? How does that work in the thin air? The thin air is this, that, and the other. Oh, right. The thin air at pressure in a sky vacuum? No. Second law of thermodynamics violation. Before you even get into how they claim the parachute works in their second law of thermodynamics violation, pressurize air in a vacuum on a skyrock called Mars. No, just a light in the sky, definitely not in a vacuum. We'd all be dead. So before we get to any claims of parachutes, we'd all be dead if they were travelling to this claimed to be rock in the sky through a vacuum. Because that would mean that there's a vast space above our heads at lower pressure, and all the gas we're breathing would want to fill it, and we'd all be dead. No gas to breathe. The vacuum of the sky
Wonder
would
if
have taken
Nathan
it all
knows
from
he
us.
has his mic on. He usually doesn't have his mic on.
Say again, Steve?
I don't think
You
Steve
could
hears
still hear
us.
us anyway.
Steve, can you hear
Yeah.
us?
I just wondered. Might
Can you
be
hear us?
talking to those other guys.
Steve, can you hear us? What's going on? Getting you interrupting and then leaving massive silences after interrupting like a summary of why the Mars landing, pretty big deal's fake.
All the mics are open apparently, so you got...
He usually doesn't do that either, does he?
Oh, it's because I'm on
There he
mute.
is.
My bad. It's my fault. You just missed me telling you off for interrupting my epic rant, Steve, and it's because I'm on mute. After Ballbusters, I used the internal mute, and I've obviously forgotten to take it off when I left, so you can't actually hear me or any of the conversation. So we're having a disjointed conversation with you. Anyway, we've sorted it.
I got my.
Yeah, I said hello about 4 times.
Should have been paying more attention. Happens every other time, basically. There's a 50-50 chance I'll leave the server mute button on because I'm using it internally. I don't know why, but when QE runs Ballbusters, every so often he gets a load of feedback through one of the lines, and you're like, unless it's on mute, it obviously won't do it if that line in Discord's on mute. But normally I can use my own desk's mute to cancel anything going through my line, and my line on the desk isn't going up and down, but it's still rolling around with my name flashing in Discord during Ballbusters, and you're like, well, I am causing feedback, I can't deny it, because there I am flashing away, even though there's nothing coming down my mic. There we go, just an anomaly with Discord when you use it with Voice Meter, I think. Anyway, that's why I was on mute and you couldn't hear anybody, Neil, and they couldn't hear us.
Can I get a mic check?
Hello, 10th man.
Finally.
Morning, Ken.
Morning.
We don't know
Nathan.
what happened to you. Your issue is totally different.
Well, I had to reboot just to get on, so no worries. What show is this, Nathan, since Friday was skipped?
1362.
Thank you. So how goes it?
Right.
Oh.
Got about 50% of my hearing in my left ear back, so I can hear stuff enough to do a show.
Good. So we were talking about
Did you have one of
all this talk about Mars and landing, but it's a violation of physics and we'd all be dead.
Well, yeah, my point was going to be, although I was so rudely interrupted by Steve, who didn't know I was talking because I was on mute.
Poor Steve.
It doesn't matter what anybody throws at you in this regard. They can ask you to justify why are the stars not quite as they should be? Why does the parachute not quite work the way it should work? Or whatever they come up with for a question about the Mars landing. It will all start with me replying, they've travelled through a second law of thermodynamics violation sky vacuum to get there. If that was the case, then we'd all be dead. We'd have no gas to breathe. So before you get to parachutes or pictures of stars, you can unequivocally say that the rock they're claiming to have travelled to is fake. It doesn't exist as a rock in a sky vacuum. Neither do we. We'd all be dead. The gas we breathe would fill the space.
So basically, something like Flatzoid said the other day, if we were in a closed system, we can't get out, and if we're in an open system, we'd all be dead.
Yeah, basically.
Well, makes sense to me.
We know it's a closed system because we need the antecedent for the gas pressure we're breathing. That is a container. A necessary antecedent for gas pressure. So without the container, there can be no pressure. Therefore, what do I need to prove that we're in a pressurized system? Well, just breathe in and out. There you go. There's the gas pressure. We're breathing. It's definitely here. Well, definitely not a sky vacuum then, because we wouldn't have any gas to breathe. It would have all dissipated into the sky vacuum.
That's so true and demonstratable. But what they say is not demonstratable and so untrue.
Yeah, they've got video footage claimed to be from a second law of thermodynamics violation. So, to summarise, any claim that's put your way in terms of this is what's being presented as the Mars landing, well, no. It's taking place in Narnia, a fake place. So, beyond the claim that the sky is a vacuum in violation of the second law of thermodynamics, if it was true, we'd be dead. There's no need to debunk anything that's claimed because it's automatically fake. Can't not be fake. They're not taking video footage from a fake place. Likewise, you don't have to justify anything that takes place in Narnia.
Right. Well, the scuba diver has air in his tanks, and he may have a time limit of 40 minutes or over an hour to dive until that air runs out. And he's got to come and refill those tanks. I mean, isn't that a pretty good example as why you can't go in the water without a tank that could hold the air? You couldn't have any air to begin with if it didn't have a container.
Or to put that another way, you wouldn't develop gas here in the first instance if we were a rock in a sky vacuum. You'd never achieve gas pressure, ever.
Yeah, and when the good Lord made the earth for us to inhabit, he made it in such a way with a dynamic system where we have containment and gas and air and the cycle, all the cycles that go through when the sun is out and when the sun is down and the night sky appears with the moon. I mean, it's a beautiful creation he made. And these guys want to say, it just happened. There was a big bang. There's no God. This is what it's all about.
Speaking of beautiful creations, I built a acoustic panel. One of the first things I did when I started, treating this room was buy various different types of acoustic treatment at various different qualities and prices, and build one of my own to see which route I wanted to take, which was the most effective, etc. Now, the one that I built myself, I just stuck next to me here where I do the show and didn't give it a second thought. You know, what it looked like, and you just kind of forget about it. And then, I don't know, about a week or two ago, my wife looked at me and said, that's ugly. I was like, all right. It's like, I want that to be. And then she said, proper acoustic treatment, i.e. stuff, expensive stuff like I'd put everywhere else. So I was like, so you're telling me to put more treatment in? Bearing in mind I'd already got a plan for the ceiling corners anyway. And she was like, yeah, I do. So I was like, wonderful. So I ordered a piece. I'd already got one that I changed its position just to get it where she wanted it. So it was like cemented in that I'm going to have to get a replacement. You know what I mean? It's like, well, that's got to get one now then. So
That's awesome.
Hey, Arwin.
Oh,
Hey, Arvin, good morning.
I've ordered 3 boxes, 3 panels.
Nice.
I call them boxes because they are, but they're acoustic panels. And after that, I've got 4 more to buy, and that is it. I've run out of space then, which is what they tell you.
There's no more wall.
run out of space.
Yeah, well, that's what they tell you when I started researching the actual acousticians who actually treat people's houses and get paid for it. You know, the ones that are willing to share their info. They basically say that in any small room, and a small room is anything the size of a classroom down, for the sake of argument, well, you'll reach a point where you haven't got any more space to treat, you know, before you achieve a flat frequency response. In fact, you'll never achieve a flat frequency response, which is the ultimate gain. You just don't want any reverb to clutter up what I'm saying to the audience and clutter up what I'm hearing from you guys as you interrupt me constantly. You know, that's very important.
Hey, you guys. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, Nathan, you ever thought about renting out your studio once it's done?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because I also had a load of amplifier repairs that were done, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, and over a period from 2019 onwards, slowly getting these amplifiers repaired from a very specialist amp tech. And he's old, no offense to the guy, but it takes him a long time. So each one was taking months to get fixed. And the last one, which is the worst, is the most horrendous to fix. It's got 3 channels in one box, so it's very tight in the box. He's had it for about 8 months. I'm not even joking. So about, I don't know, I think it was back in July. Yeah, it would have been July. I bought a subwoofer. And the reason was because I had a subwoofer. We moved the room around to treat it acoustically, and I moved out the space that I had for the subwoofer I had. So I'm like, I've got to put it at the front of the room. I'll buy a better one, which I'd always intended to do. I'd always wanted to finish it off with a decent subwoofer because mine was cheap. Not cheap. I gave it to Anthony, actually. It was a very good subwoofer. But I need it to know when there's anything subsonic going into the audience's feed. If you can't hear it, you don't know it's happening. And it's admittedly, in the entire time I've done the show, I think it's been 3 times that somebody set off the subwoofer. All 3 were QE, I might add. So I don't know what he does, but something he does on the mic suddenly sets off a subsonic frequency. Like, Jesus, there's like 20 hertz resonating through the room. But if you haven't got something that can produce 20 hertz, you don't know it's happening. And you can't tell the person to stop doing it. And it just ends up with, you listen back on the iPad after the fact and go, what the hell is that horrendous distortion? And it's just 20 hertz fundamental frequencies resonating right the way up through the frequency range, messing everything up. So yeah, that's, sounds really fussy. I am. I want the show to be very as professional as I can do it. And it takes time to learn what you've got to do and how to do it. And part of that is hearing what you say. So especially if I'm talking, I know I said it in jest earlier, but that's the most critical bit. If I'm talking and there's reverb from me in the room and someone says something through my monitoring equipment, both will mix and I can't hear it. Now that the room's treated, even if I'm in the middle of a statement and somebody says something, I can hear it. Even if there's sometimes 2 or 3 people, I can actually hear what's being said. Now, if I can hear it, the audience can hear it. Even though it's a mush of people talking, it's not a mush of distortion. And they can actually pick out what people have said. And often critical words are spoken when other people are speaking intentionally by our opponents. They want to slip a certain detail in, slip it in a bit of chaos, and then move past it. Because you've declared it, it just wasn't clear. Well, I need things to be as clear as humanly possible. And, for anyone who's like, you don't need a really professionally treated studio, which is what I'll have at the end. I'll have a bona fide studio. Well, why do you need that for a YouTube video? Well, because I need to hear. I need to really pin down what people have actually said, the words they use. I listen back to the show and I'm saying my hearing's screwed. And one of the things Rumpus says is, they say this is a debate show. Now my hearing's all messed up. So I'm like, I heard baking show. So I'm like, you can hear him saying it's a baking show. It's like, well, that's nothing to do with my failings in equipment. That's my hearing being knackered. So I heard baking. Just goes to show.
Different kind of equipment failing.
Well, we do cook.
That's just what I heard, but you can't, that's the end of the line in terms of actually hearing things. If your ears are messed up, there's no amount of acoustic treatment that's going to sort that out.
Did someone plug my cooking show? Is that what was just happening?
It's probably, I did think about that actually, in all seriousness. I'm like, why would I go to baking? Why would I hear that? Obviously I've heard or misheard, but why go to baking as a mishearing? And you're like, well, occasionally we do talk about that because of you. That's where my brain went, I think.
No, it's easy to, even on the panel side, and I'm sure Neil could attest to this as well as the other members, that we hear things and then you hear a different thing, and sometimes we have to say, hey, Nathan, that's not what he said. He said this. And then other times we hear things and you have to correct us. So when everyone's talking at one time, it's a jambalaya, man.
Exactly. So you want it to be as clear as I can make it. As I'm fiddling, that's all I do throughout the show is fiddle with people's volume levels, and having set up all the compressors and all the limiters that I can already and tested them and made sure they're good. Some of them can be complete failures if you ever watch some of my test streams. But, you test this stuff and you make sure it's working effectively and it actually does improve what people can hear, which is all it's really about. The visuals, yeah, they could be better, but I don't think it's important. I really don't think what's flashing up on the background right now, currently me when I hit 15k subscribers, somebody made a, whatever you call it, fan art, if you like, of me as the Matrix Neo character. Well, that isn't really important. Whereas the discussion, the debate, the words being spoken is far more important.
Well, you had the one guy that had the great idea that when you're done talking, say over.
Just doesn't want the conversation to be natural. What would be better, and I will moan at you on the panel, is that when someone else is held up against the wall and there's a silence, often people on the panel want, well, I'm waiting for a gap to get my words in, so I'll get them in here. And it's like, no, there's a key response that we're waiting for. Now, if there's a 10-second silence before we get it, so be it. But often people are obviously, normally the adrenaline's flowing a little bit if there's a good conversation going, and it's just one of them. You're going to have interruptions. Like I said many times, at first that used to really wind me up. Now it's just part of the battleground, if you will. That's the way the land lies, whether you like it or not.
I thought it was stupid anyway to say over after you're done talking.
Indeed, it is. It's but very unnatural. Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video there is a link to get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by 10th Man, Neil, Arwin, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Good morning, everybody.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. Good to have you all. You do a bit of housekeeping?
Yeah, let's do it.
Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge, that's a horizon formerly known as Earth curvature?
Not since man has existed, and the black swan, and a death to their model, because their radius isn't there to show the curvature where it's supposed to be. So the model is dead. All the books written about it being there, when it's not, that's dead.
Well, how can you say the How can you say the model is dead? Because everything works out.
No, it doesn't work out. That's why you can't demonstrate the model in reality.
In reality, it's dead, but the model's not dead. The model works perfectly for them.
No, most models.
Wait, what model?
Most models are made after something real.
Fair question, though, you were asked. Who is that? Was that George?
Now, I was going to ask, what is the physical part? It's the physical part that is missing.
He's already declared that math. Somebody said what model, I think. Who was that?
Yeah, I said, what model are you talking about? They don't have a model.
Question.
Oh, not a working one.
Let's see this model. I mean, we know what their model's based on, though, right? R. Any evidence of the R value, Earth radius?
Well, it's supposed to be 59 miles from the center to the surface of their model. And the curvature would have to be based on the observer's height and based on the black swan and many other observations. It's not where it's supposed to be. In fact, it's so off that the Earth's circumference would be past the moon.
If you calculated the black swan image as a physical geometric spheroid horizon, then yes, your R that resulted from the maths with dip angles would give you an Earth that was beyond the current claimed orbital path of the moon. It would be beyond that path in terms of its physical size. That's right. Nonsense, because we don't have a physical geometric spheroid horizon. We only have one horizon. The horizon in the globe model is physical and geometric. The horizon we see in reality is apparent, non-physical.
Correct.
Yeah, but we can make three assumptions and then we can calculate it into existence. If we assume that we're in a gravitational field and we assume that there's a radius value, and if we assume that we know the size of the radius value by assuming the Earth's a sphere, then we can calculate into existence a physical horizon that we can never perceive, and just expect you to believe that it's there because we do see a horizon, but we just got to squint your eyes a little bit, and then boom, you're on a ball.
Right.
That's a lot of assumptions, Anthony.
Horizon that we don't see, but we can assume is there. You said, where's there? You mean we don't see it, but it's there when we don't see it? That makes no sense.
Well, I was thinking about this. Where's the assumption of R in the housekeeping? And I've realized that there's three major assumptions that they make. Like, they assume that we're in a gravitational field. They assume that Newton and Einstein are calculating something that they call gravity. They don't consider the possibility that it's actually a false dichotomy. They don't consider the possibility that there might be a third explanation. And by focusing on either Newton or Einstein, we're completely and fundamentally missing that it's a false dichotomy. There is a third explanation that explains it without us moving that they just completely dismiss. So I'm wondering how many assumptions we should play a game of. How many assumptions are there in their heliocentric model? Because I reckon there's more than 3. I reckon there's probably about 10, maybe even more. But we should start looking at where the assumptions are now, because then expand that list of assumptions.
We can expand that out for every housekeeping question. So if we do the 2 that we've done already, when we ask for any evidence of a physical geometric spheroid horizon formerly known as Earth curve, we can state that they assume the horizon is a physical Earth curve edge blocking boats and buildings based on an R value in a mathematical model. Their assumption is the horizon is physical, blocking things. Remember? Boats going over Earth curve? All starts with the horizon. Yeah, that's a physical geometric spheroid horizon that used to block stuff before the black swan. That assumption's been destroyed. Same with the R value. Although that is the most base of all of the assumptions. What are they assuming? Why are we asking about any evidence of this R value? Because that's the base of every assumption they make ever when they declare the Earth's a sphere. They start with the assumption of the R value. You could move on to... I was going to say distance to the sun, but because you're here, Anthony, might as well go with what we discussed already.
Don't go yet.
Go on.
Don't go yet. Don't go yet. Go to the master B, pop up that image I just put there, and let me show you what Eratosthenes assumed.
Okay, it's on.
Yeah, okay, so you see, if you presuppose, like Anthony is saying, that you live on a sphere, then when you take a sighting that the way the Eratosthenes story goes, of the sun at zenith in Cyan, which is the bottom picture there on the right, there's no shadow cast in that well. And then you go to Alexandria, and there's a shadow, an angle, and we'll call this one A1 on the globe here, just as an example. Then you're saying, oh, well, the reason we have a shadow in Alexandria is because I assume we live on a sphere, and it's the curved surface of the sphere causing the shadows. And then you also have to assume light rays from the sun are coming in parallel. So based on assumption that you live on a sphere, begging the question, then you use shadows based on a radius. You have to tie it to a radius. So you say, all right, well, it's 1/50th of the Earth's circumference. So this is the size of Earth, and we have a radius. But light has to come in straight, which it doesn't. And you have to assume you live on a sphere. Or you can go to the left side of this picture and say, if we live on a flat plane, the same thing could happen if the sun is moving and the Earth is stationary. So the Earth is stationary. The sun is over that one pillar there. So that's its zenith. And the pillar to the left, A1, on a flat plane, has the same shadow. It's all assumption.
There is a point that they push beyond that. They always say, well, if you have 2 or 3 observers, maybe 4 observers, then you can't have it on a flat plane. But the problem is, on both models, the more observers you have, you always get 1 or 2 erroneous values when you calculate it or when you measure it. So that if you look on Sly Sparkane's test when he tried to do the Eratosthenes experiment at some point 2 years ago, look at all of his collected data and all of his measurements. There's 2 in there that clearly don't match the rest of the pattern. Now, he ignores them and he focuses on all the ones that supports his story. But look at the 2 that don't support the story and they don't support either model. And it's like, why do they exist? And I don't know the reason. I'm just saying that it doesn't model out on either model.
Well, let me give an answer. Nathan, put up the next picture.
Done.
Okay, this is why their model doesn't work. Light doesn't come in parallel. It's over.
Yeah.
No matter what they do with 2 or 3 observers, 5, 6 observers, I could pull this picture and a boatload more. That light doesn't come in parallel, so you can't do it because that's the only way it would work on a sphere with an arc. If you want to use the arc as the causation of the angles, because you have to take it to the radius. And if you take it to the radius and say that's where I'm observing it from, well, then light must come in straight, but light doesn't come in straight. So they're dead right there. Second, the black swan. Let's measure this curvature based on your radius. And obviously, those 2 oil wells are not where they're supposed to be. I'm sorry, the horizon has to be in front of them, and the horizon is well beyond 10 miles. So it's over both ways.
Hey, Chocolate.
Good morning, guys.
It's, hey, Chocolate.
Hey.
So the globe is dead no matter which way you do it.
It's dead from so many different perspectives. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I heard Neil deGrasse Tyson say, oh, but if you bring a 3rd well, it can work out after he says that, oh, you know, the Eratosthenes, that works on a flat plane too, except when you bring a 3rd well. Okay, Mr. What is he? Astrophysicist?
Magician.
I like to, magician. Yeah, why don't you show me straight rays from the sun first?
He's literally a magician too. Did you guys hear about the magic speed?
Magic what?
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Magic what?
Magic what?
Magic speed.
Magic speed? No, tell us all about it.
Hang on, I know what it is, but go ahead, Chocolate.
So supposedly, he was talking to this guy that he always talks to on that Star Talk show or whatever about all these craters, quote unquote, that are on the moon that all look like they were just, made completely, they're all 90 degrees from Earth. At least they appear to be so, with no angles or whatever. So he's trying to explain how this is possible. And what he says is that supposedly there is a magic speed that these asteroids can achieve, that they can impact the moon at no matter what angle, and it'll always look like that.
That's like a
He
story.
literally said, "I'll send the video to you. I'll post it in Master B." But it's hilarious because he literally says it's a magic speed,
and he gets away with it.
Yep. Give me a sec. I'll post it so you can listen.
It's a classic.
Great story.
Yeah, it's a cool story, all right. Wait till you hear it. Give me a sec.
Any evidence of the distance of the sun?
Sorry.
Distance to the sun? Anybody? Feel free to pipe up, Discord.
What is the sun?
Discord.
It's over
I
there.
do want to. Nathan, would you mind sharing my screen?
Sure.
Distance to the sun. This is a video. It's an oldie, but it's probably one of his best videos. I've never worked out how he did this, but P-Brain, it's one just sort by most popular videos, and it's up there. Crepuscular sun rays, 3 minutes 14 seconds in. He basically shows if the sun rays were parallel, you couldn't have crepuscular rays because on their model, all of the sunlight coming in from the sun is parallel. Now, the way that would be demonstrated to us if it was true is that we would have across the whole horizon, we would have continuously vertical lines never, ever, ever angular. They would always be vertical. And he's now going to play, or he's going to show, I don't know how he did this, but it's brilliant. He's going to show vertical strips across the whole horizon to demonstrate what would be seen if we were actually living on a plane with vertical and parallel lines. There we go, lines of rays coming in. You wouldn't get these crepuscular rays. You would get, let me find the bit where he does it. Thought I had, there we go. There it is. I don't quite know how he did this. So shout outs and kudos to P-Brain. And it's coming up any second. There we go. That's how we would see the horizon. We would see vertical streams always, never crepuscular rays. There would always be vertical lines at the horizon. At sunset, you couldn't have crepuscular rays if all the rays were parallel. But they expect us to think or believe that they're parallel when they're not. You can't have crepuscular rays.
That's why I ended that section the way I did.
That's it. Sorry, that's how it would look. If the rays were parallel, that's the way that crepuscular rays would appear. They wouldn't be crepuscular. They would be vertical. They would be parallel. They would always be like that. There would not be crepuscular rays.
Just keep it here, Sleeping Warrior. Let me comment on this. So Eratosthenes, when he did his shadow test, right, where it's the center there where the zenith is, the sun directly over that spot on the earth, that's his well in Cyan. And to the far left, let's say, is Alexandria. And there was a shadow cast there on that pillar, right? And so he has to curve the earth in order to get that shadow if light is coming in straight like this. But since light doesn't come in straight like this, you don't need to curve the earth. It's on a flat plane, hence the angle where the sun is in relationship to Alexandria that's casting the shadow 500 stadia away. Not because the earth's surface is curved to cause the shadow, but because he pre-assumed the earth was a sphere already. Again, those ballers with their begging the question sandwiches they love. He says, well, what kind of radius would that be if I was on a sphere? And he figured it out, 3959. It would have to be that based on the shadow, except it's not true.
But the problem is, though, always remember that there's always one or two erroneous angles when these observations are made. And it's like, why do we get them on either model? It shouldn't be there on either model. If the sun's physical, tangible, like something that we can perceive by touch, loosely said, if it's physical, we shouldn't get them. But for some reason, on both models, it doesn't seem to do a consistent, reliable thing.
There are no two models.
What do you mean both models? You mean a flat surface?
All right. I take back.
Thank you. There are no two models. Wow, I can't finish it. There are no two models. There's just reality. Sun rays do not come in parallel. That's reality. So the globe model is dead because of that. Also, the black swan destroys it because they need a physical geometric edge based on the height of the observer. You can use those two together and destroy any globe argument.
Yeah, they say that's an anomaly, the black swan.
Okay. It's an anomaly. What does that mean?
Can't ask him
What
to
does that
explain
mean,
their,
Neil?
We have
their
way
hand
more
wave.
than one of those pictures, though, so I don't know why they say that.
We only need one.
You just need one.
Yeah, we only need
Yeah,
one.
I understand that, but we have way more. So how can they say that's an anomaly? That's just.
Well, why do you think I said? Why do they say that? And I need that answer before we go on. So all you
It's
need
a hand
is one.
wave. He's not going to give you the answer. When they hand wave this stuff, it's just him parroting their hand wave. He's not going to give you an explanation for it.
Thank you.
Godzilla 37 says, "War is peace, ignorance is strength, and parallel is divergent." Thanks for the super chat.
But I don't understand it either, because that's why we call it a black swan, correct? Because all you need is one black swan to prove that all swans are not white.
Our proper analogy is as follows, right? If all swans are white, you only need one black swan to demonstrate that to be false. Now, the assertion is carried over by comparison or by analogy with the assertion that we have a physical, geometric, sphere edge horizon that blocks boats and buildings in the distance. Do we all forget that we're arguing about how much we should or shouldn't see at the bottom of stuff because how the physical Earth curve got in the way? Well, that's an assertion that horizons are physical. Horizons are Earth curve. That's your white swan. Horizons being physical and blocking stuff. That's what it asserts in their maths. They calculate all day about how much it should or shouldn't block stuff at the bottom with its physical Earth curve edge nature. Well, you only need to show one non-physical horizon to disprove the assertion that horizons are physical. Because that one isn't. That's a black swan by comparison, with the Karl Popper analogy being a black swan being demonstrated to show that they're not all white. Well, they're not all physical geometric blocking boats and buildings. That's what the black swan destroys. Now, for you to have a comeback, which is, well, it's refracted. The horizon is going to be refracted with an R value. That R value, terrestrial refraction, requires the horizon to be physical to measure it. So they're screwed. Earth curve debunked. Horizons are not Earth curve edges.
Indeed. Nathan, go to
Yes.
Master B. Let's put a final nail in this coffin. I got Aristosthenes' images up.
The one with the cartoon globe and parallel
Yes,
rays.
with the light rays coming parallel.
Yeah, it's up.
Okay, so that bottom one with the S, that's Cyan, and the top one with the little A, that's Alexandria. This is the only way you could have a shadow and say it's because of Earth curvature. Those rays have to come in that way. Go to the next cartoon one. So a little bit more of a detail here, showing how those shadows prove an Earth curve. Well, those light rays have to come in parallel, right? And then you figure out the shadow size from the distance from Cyan to Alexandria, do a little math, and you're going to get a radius out of it, and 1/50th of their circumference. And this is what they presuppose. Except, go to the next few slides at your leisure. How do light rays come in? You can see as Nathan scrolls through, light rays don't come in parallel. And the last one, does that look parallel to you? Do you think that those light rays coming in that way might cast a shadow on the pole sticking up at the very edge of it? Does that prove a sphere? Or does it prove the angle of the light is further away, it's no longer above it directly at its zenith where there is no shadow? It's a silly argument.
Cool. I think we've covered this beautifully today. Any scientific evidence of gravity?
No, but there is a sign of a magic speed in Master B and Ballbusters.
A sleeping warrior.
If we live on a sphere, shouldn't we need gravity for that?
If we live on a sphere, begging the question that we live on a sphere, wouldn't we need gravity to live on that reified assumption you've made? Is that your question?
Yeah, basically.
Yes, but when you say need gravity, that's just a word used at trench level to claim that gas is being held here in violation of natural law. But in reality, their gravity doesn't do that. So while they might need a word to get around a problem that violates natural law, gravity, in quotes, doesn't do that. So it's a weird one.
Why would we need gravity if we're on a sphere?
They need gas to go down, go boom, boom, like bouncy balls, solids that have been, suspended in the air until they become more dense than the air, then they fall back down. Well, they need gas to fall down, even though the water cycle disproves that. Or you can let go of a helium balloon and it disproves that. Gas does not go down, go boom, boom. It expands at high speeds in all directions. And at trench level, when you put to them that gas expands in all directions, they'll tell you that no, it goes down, go boom, boom with gravity, even though gravity, the bending of conceptual force space, is not a force. It's not holding gas here at all.
They need gravity.
Tends to wander about.
Tends to wander about.
Yeah, Rumpus said that, but they need gravity because they hold on to their sphere globe model in an open system when it's spinning and going in all its gyrations in the universe. So they need gravity to keep the air here, go down, boom, boom. They need it here to keep the water on the surface of the earth. Because whenever you ask them to demonstrate a ball spinning and water on it, which direction does the water go? It's going to go outwards. And they said, no, but we have gravity.
I like how you just repeat it. Say it again. Gravity. It's like Beetlejuice.
Or Hare Krishna.
Yep.
Super Mario back with us yet? Clearly not.
Yes, I'm here. What can I do for you?
We had a conversation this morning about gravity.
Yes, we did. Just give me 2 minutes. I'm just kicking the dog out for a WALK, so give me 2 minutes.
I will carry on and come back to it then. We might probably around our house.
Perfect. The magic speed video is 2 minutes long.
Magic speed. Yeah, you'll have to send me that clip. They're literally telling you it's magic these days.
Yep. And then he ends the video with, lava flattens out in its liquid state.
Did he? Did deGrasse Tyson flash his palms and show there was nothing up his sleeves when he said it?
No, but he actually did the little flattening sign. So very cute.
Speaking of Tyson, any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
Not yet.
All those are all observational study. They're not science, Nathan. I'm good, by the way.
It is observation, not science, Tony.
Oh, it's part of it. It gives you the dependent variable, but you need to do that experiment bit, the bit that Blyth always ignored, the bit where you give someone a bit of a tittle to see if it laughs. That's what that's what they miss, and they can't do any of that tittling stuff.
Wait, you mean you need another variable?
Yeah.
What, you mean one to manipulate?
Yeah, you need to tittle something. If it doesn't laugh, then it's not the cause of the thing that you're looking at, and that's the problem.
Ah, I see. And therefore, you can establish the cause of an effect, huh?
Your screen's flashing away for some reason. Stop sharing.
So are we waiting for Sleeping Warrior to play Magic Tyson Dyson?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, I thought Nathan was going to play it.
No, I don't think anybody's looking to play it. It's something that we discussed this morning, or Anthony called me up about. I think he wants to present that. I just hopefully it won't be flashing and causing people to. There we go. No epileptic.
Excellent.
Flashing anyway.
All right, so I rang Nathan frantically the other night because I found a video of Thunderfoot Clown that I thought Nathan would be interested in watching, and then he released a video on it at the same like a few hours later, so we'd already come across it. What I want to show, and I need some help from the audience because I'm going to be careful how I word this because I'm aware that you're not allowed to do certain things. So what I'm going to show is a couple of weeks back I did a video, relative density illustrated with the best visualization I've seen to date. In the comments box, the original link is there. And basically what this guy does is he simulates basically what happened with the egg, but he does it with gas. He does it with gas and he does it in a sealed container. Now, at the time, I knew that the container was sealed, but I wanted to demonstrate what he shows with regards to the black sphere in the middle representing the egg and how he simply changes the mass, but not the volume, and it causes an acceleration. Because that is essentially what I did. I changed the mass of the medium, causing an acceleration. He changed the mass of the sphere in the middle, which I'll call an egg, and it caused an acceleration. So I wanted to demonstrate that particular point. But I'd stored in my databanks, my memory databanks, that there was another conversation that needed to happen. Now, in the guy's video, I'm going to show you it from his video because then you can see it raw. He uses this simulation to demonstrate how gas pressure does not need a container, and he has 3 rules. So if I'll make this bigger, first off, he says atoms fly unimpededly. So let's say gas molecules. We can all agree that gas molecules are flying around in all directions. We can agree with that one. And then he has rule 2 that, Rule 2 states that atoms bounce off each other and the walls of the container. So we can all agree with that, because we know that you need the container to get the collisions with each other, otherwise they just carry on in space. But look at this third rule that he's got. He says atoms fall down. I think he means gas molecules, because what he shows is that he shows lovely curved trajectories of these gas molecules. Now, he shows them at very slow speeds so that we can see the tails, which is great. But we know that these gas molecules are zipping around in all directions at high velocities, 500-600 meters per second. And we also know that they travel in straight paths, because gas molecules are not pulled down by anything that they insist on calling gravity. And there's nothing pushing them from above. They're omnidirectional at all times. So after the event that I've made my video demonstrating the point that I wanted to rely on, I then went back to him and I wanted to engage with him to try and get him to have the simulation done again, but with some corrections. And as you can see, there's 64 replies. And this goes on. And basically, I say to him, I want you to take the lid off. I want you to give the velocities around about 400 meters per second. I want you to provide elastic collisions so that there's no net loss. And I want you to put straight non-curved lines, because gas molecules don't follow curved trajectories the way he says, because gas molecules don't go down, go boom, boom. And I'm just showing you the length of it. And I've had this for ages and ages and ages. And then he stopped talking, because I've got to the point where I've said to him, take the lid off, put the collision speeds or the velocities up, elastic collisions and straight trajectories, and he won't do it. So let's go back to the top, and you can see that I've done another comment, started a new thread because he's ignoring me. How are you getting on with the simulation without the lid? Are you still being dishonest and shirking it? 2 days ago, it's gone with no reply. So unless COVID's took over in his life and it's become an issue for him, I'm not having that he's not seen it. He's had a back and forth with me over the last week, and he won't rerun the simulation. So I've asked him many, many times to take the lid off. You can just see the white line up here. Now, notice in this video here, it's right on the top of the bezel. It is in frame, but you can only just see it. It's not as thick as the other two. So because the lid's there, if I just play this, you'll see. You can see that in this example there, he's got it. See that one then bounced off the top. Obviously, that one would escape. Now, in the actual video that he shows where I was making my point, which is here, you can see that there is a line across the top, and you can see that there is many, 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 many collisions with that surface there. And they need the surface to create the bounce back. But if you remove that surface, they're not going to bounce back. Now, he knows that, and he readjusts in the video. He moves it out the way so you can't quite see it initially, because he says, yes, and we even have Brownian motion, which is true, but he then puts it back in such a way. See, it's missing now, so it implies that there's no lid. So I'm trying to get him to redo the experiment or redo the visualization, his simulation in his model, but without the lid. There are 3 other things, and he's refusing to do it. So I'm not asking anybody to troll the guy. I'm asking people to go over and encourage him to take the lid off the test, the container, give them better velocities, 400 meters per second, elastic collisions, and straight line trajectories, because that's what we know they do. They're omnidirectional. They're not influenced by gravity. And encourage the guy to redo the test, and he won't do it. He won't take this lid off because he needs the lid to be there to get the molecules to bounce back. Well, if the lid's not there and the molecules don't bounce back, then it debunks his own observation, his own simulation. And obviously, that's what we want to try and do. We want to demonstrate that even blurthers, when they try and simulate this stuff, they have to do it in such a way to be dishonest. So this is the key point here, where he puts it back. Can you see that the lid's now missing? It's not in the picture. So look, there it is there. You see it there. Now he's moved it, and it's now not in the picture at all. So he's trying to simulate a gradient with the impression that there's no lid on it, but there is actually a lid. So I'm trying to get him to redo it with no lid, and stop changing and stop, this third gas law as well that he's implied. Remove that bit, because atoms don't fall down. They're omnidirectional, not influenced by any gravitational force, even though we're in a gravitational field, apparently. So just encourage the guy, not troll. Encourage him to redo the test properly and see if we can get him to do it, because I really want to see what happens when he removes the lid. I'm done.
It's a simulation. Who cares? Right, and you're saying it's on screen right now. Atoms fall down. All right, I can debunk that with a puddle. Hello.
I can debunk it with helium balloon.
I don't even need helium, which is not that easy to come by. Meanwhile, puddles, right? Just look at the next puddle, and does it stay there? What happens to the water? Do the atoms fall down as a rule? Does this rule apply to water, does it? As the steam evaporates and goes up to form clouds. Here's some clouds for this complete idiot. What's his name? Let's name this idiot. Name, Anthony.
Pronounce it. He's foreign, so there might be a language thing. But OK Riley is what I'm going to say. OK Riley, do it again without the lid on.
It's called OK Riley.
No, I think it's Rylos. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. It's foreign.
Okay. Well, atoms fall down, right? How do you explain these clouds? That's not because the gas went down, go boom boom, like bouncy balls poured into a fish tank. Now, I understand that there are idiots with PhDs that go around telling people that gas go down, go boom boom like solid bonded bouncy balls. No, it doesn't. See this? Yeah, that's not gone down. It's come from here up to here. So this rule, it's not a rule. It's an idiotic assumption that we have a downward vector with gravity. Total nonsense. Atoms fall down? No. Can debunk that with a puddle. Idiot.
Yep.
Excellent breakdown there, Anthony. Loved it.
Bottom line is,
just take the lid off.
We've got a lid on screen, right? This is a picture from Spaceballs. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. So, this would be the scenario we would require on a globe Earth. Containment for the gas pressure. Because this vacuum, this vacuum cleaner, that's representative, by a humorous aside, of the black area, the vacuum of space. Yeah? Well, this low pressure zone, would be where all of this gas filled. Now, coincidentally, in Spaceballs, they depict it with this layer that's a very obvious glass dome around their sphere Earth in the movie. Now, the fact that Earth as a sphere is depicted in exactly the same way, it's just not claimed that this is a barrier of any physical description to hold gas here. But the pictures are very, very similar. When you see the claim to be pictures of Earth from space, there's just gas pressure next to a low pressure 10 to the minus 17 torr vacuum. Now, the sky is not a vacuum, because if it was, the gas we breathe would fill the space. If the sky was a vacuum and we were a sphere in it, we would never develop gas pressure in the first place. Every little tiny bit of gas that was released from the ground would immediately dissipate into space. It would never develop pressure, exactly as Anthony's been showing. You need a container to achieve that. Even in a simulation with rules that say the gas go down, go boom boom, it still needs to be contained. Space is fake. Anybody who hasn't caught on yet, let this be that moment where the penny drops. Outer space is fake. If it was real, if the sky was a vacuum, none of us would be breathing. The gas we breathe would dissipate into that availability of volume. That space, called space, would be a space for gas to fill, and fill it must, in line with entropy. It would dissipate into the volume, and we'd be dead. None of us would be breathing. So there must be containment, rendering every claim that NASA have ever made fake. The current nonsense about going to Mars completely fake. You can't travel through a second law of thermodynamics violation sky vacuum to get to Mars, claimed to be a rock, actually a light in the sky. Because if they travelled through a vacuum to get to a rock called Mars, actually a light in the sky, then the gas could follow the same exact path at high velocity as it expands in all directions, which is what gas does. So we'd all be dead if their trip to Mars was true. It isn't.
Just a little note here. When Nathan said the penny drops, he's not referencing gravity. He means, as a metaphor, the light goes on in your head.
Because some pennies will go up, won't they? And it depends on the medium, doesn't it? Because some pennies won't actually go down. If you drop a penny in, say, the medium of, say, I don't know, what's that mercury one? Which way does the penny then go? Oh, hang on, it's not even up, is it? It goes to the more or less dense medium, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I picked it up. It was at equilibrium. I picked it up and I let go and it goes back to rest. So we know why it drops, but that's not the point.
10th, what would happen if the floor suddenly fell away, like in the vomit comet, you know, where the penny was before and now the floors fell at the same rate that the penny displaces its now medium of air? What would then happen?
You see it in the vomit comet until it stops.
So it'd float, wouldn't it? It's not really floating, but you can think of it as floating. It's actually falling because the floor that it was touching a minute ago has been swiped out from underneath its feet. So now it's not able to sustain itself on the floor in that state of fall or rest because the floor's not there. So what would you expect to happen? It's kind of like if you removed the shelf when a helium balloon was pushing up against it. If you suddenly remove the shelf and then it carried on being pulled towards the cloud by an attractive force that isn't really there, but you can think of as there, that you can calculate is there, the helium balloon falls to the clouds, doesn't it? It's the same way what happens with the vomit comet, but Blurthers conveniently apply the equivalence principle of Einstein conveniently in their favor, because although the plane's falling out the sky and the people that are in the plane are also falling out the sky and they're protected in a giant condom kind of thing from the earth resistance around them, so that when they're free falling, it's almost like they're in a vacuum chamber, but of many, many heights. They apply the equivalence principle where they say, yeah, they're not really falling out the sky. You can think of them as floating. How dishonest is that when they know that the plane's falling out the sky, just so happens to look like they're floating?
You know why they do that?
Good breakdown there.
But do you know why they do that mathematically? There's a reason for that.
Well, it's so that they can deceive newbies like Rachie with all the 5 zeros into thinking that they're floating when it's bloody obvious that they're falling out the sky.
Yeah, sure. But the reason mathematically is because when we're not moving, we're on the ground in what you just described as fall arrest. They assert we have 1G. However,
yeah, we
when
don't have 1G there. It's 0G there.
Just don't steal my point. You weren't making it.
Oh. Sorry.
Right. So we're not moving on the ground. That's 1G in their model. Yeah? Agreed?
Yeah.
When falling at a rapid pace in a plane, to simulate their assumption of orbital mechanics, that would be to say falling around a sphere constantly at a fixed rate. Well, that perpetual falling is described as 0G.
Orbits.
So what they've done is they've moved the scale one place. When moving, you're rumpusing me, Anthony. Shut up. They've moved the scale one place. So when you're stationary, that would be, you'd think, 0. No, 1. So there's a downward force on me, 1, when I'm not doing anything. Yeah. Well, so you negate the force by falling at a rapid pace. yeah, that's right. That's 0. That's how they do it.
That is exactly what they do. They've moved the arbitrary 0 value to be 1 and then applied a negative G to it, and that's what they call 0G. So relative to the number 1, they're saying that that's a minus value relative to number of 1. And we're saying, hang on a sec, whether you're arguing for a force pulling you down being Newtonian stuff, which has been superseded by Einstein, or whether you're arguing for bendy space-time that they all swerve conveniently because it suits the narrative to ignore Einstein because it's not good for them, then we say, hang on a second, there is another alternative explanation. It's not actually a dichotomy between Newton and Einstein. That would be a false dichotomy because there is a third explanation. They just don't like talking about it. So long as we're arguing over Newton or Einstein and getting within that entanglement, that quantum entanglement, perhaps you might want to call it, that issue is constantly being talked about at the expense of a third explanation that is demonstrating the false equivalence, because they don't want us to talk about a third explanation. They want us to talk about Einstein and Newton. So long as we're talking about that, I'm done.
So when Anthony's got his egg in equilibrium, that's what I would call 0. Now, by the same token, you can be on the edge of the beach and move into the water and go down, because you're still more dense than the medium that you're next to, but in fall arrest on the beach, still 0. You're not moving. You're not doing anything. Same goes for Anthony's egg. Now, it changes the density of the medium, and the egg moves. So you can attribute acceleration to it at that stage when it's moving relative to your viewing it. Well, those are forces that you can actually attribute causal relationships to. And when you ascribed a value arbitrarily to it, you could say that the rate it moved up at was a rate of 1. And then when it stopped moving, it was back to 0. But they don't. what they're saying is when the egg is stationary, not moving up or down, it's got a force of 1. And if you can hurtle it up, right, or have it falling down, right, 9.8 meters per second, well, that rate is 0. Total nonsense. They need a force and effect when nothing's happening. That's what they assert. Do the rest of the house.
Are we going to get to the? Are we going to get to the magic Tyson Dyson?
Tyson Dyson.
Chocolate, save us.
Yeah, that's got to come from chocolate.
I don't know if he sent it me in.
You don't need anything from me. Just play the video.
To Master B.
Whereabouts do I start at though? The timestamp is.
It pretty much gets right into it. It's only like a minute long. 2 minutes long.
Okay, so I'll play it from the beginning of his presence with the interview. All right.
Moon, any photograph of the moon, shape of the crater, they're perfect circles. So here you go. You ready? If you have an impactor that comes in straight into a surface, it makes a circular crater. Right. If you send it at an angle, it will make an elongated crater. Okay? This will happen. So they're saying, no, wait a minute, let's send it in faster. Turns out there is a magic speed with which you can send in an asteroid, and on collision, it will make a perfect circle no matter the angle it hits.
Oh my God.
That's the response I was expecting.
Do you notice the trick, how he raises his voice? A magic speed.
I did guess right though, didn't I? You see, he's been trained, right? Behavioral psychologists have got hold of him, told him how to look truthful, and he's there with his palms out, showing you there's nothing down his sleeves, exactly as I guessed.
Turns out that if you send it at a magic speed.
No. You gotta really emphasize that magic speed.
Wouldn't it be better for him to say that the moon is actually the one hitting the asteroid? That's why all the craters are circular.
Magic speed. Weren't you listening?
Yeah, that was
magic.
Look, I could just insert because we made it up ourselves. Because there's a magic speed, because we made up the trajectory that rocks would hit this claimed to be rock in the sky vacuum called the moon. Well, it's magic because I said so. Oh my God. It's like I don't even have to add anything to it. I'm thinking, how can I send this into farce? I don't need to, right? He's saying it outright. It's magic.
Yep, but you think he says when he says he does a quick calculation at the football game. He's telling you, I'm making this bullcrap up.
He's not even doing a quick calculation. It's just magic.
What he's basically doing is calculating into existence something that he believes is there, and he proves it by calculating it. Well, that's a reification, isn't it? That's why we have demonstration. The more he calculates it, the more we talk about it, the more it becomes a bloody thing.
Look, there's no magic speed. This is nonsense. It's just absurd. They're not even trying anymore. It's just pathetic. Magic? What?
I actually think that I heard Nathan Thompson or Whitsitt, one of them two, I'm not sure which one it was, but one of them was describing how they went to a SpaceX launch and they were laughing. They were literally laughing at it because it was so overtly taking the mick, obviously taking the mick, that it was clearly not, it wasn't fast enough. Whatever was going on there, they said it looked like it was a balloon or words to that effect. And they said that it felt like they were trolling the blurthers. And I'm like, yeah, that is exactly what they're doing. They're actually our puppets now. We're puppeteering them because they're laughing at the blurthers, thinking that there's this parachute that can work on Mars and this helicopter can work on Mars. It's just an outrage.
How many times you hear Nathan say to Rumpus, the tables have turned?
Yep.
Turns out that there's a black swan. I don't know what to say about it.
Yeah, it was the end of the road 1st of Jan 2020, Black Swan hit the headlines, and that's been it. That's the end. You know, I thought it was the end with the declaration of the assumption of R. Now, that didn't end it, because quite the contrary. Well, we already know it's a sphere, therefore perfectly acceptable to beg the question. You know, and I didn't exactly expect that. But you're like, okay, so we've got to beg the question with you. Anthony was right all along. That was the key to breaking it. Begging the question alongside them and then demonstrating how their assumption does not work and cannot work, to the point where they've got to tell us that their geometry's broken. The light to the horizon's refracted. The light is bent. Therefore not geometric, no tangent point, can't be done, Earth not a sphere, horizon not physical, we wouldn't expect it. Those are all rebuttals. I know they're also summaries of the death of the globe model, but they're rebuttals that we've had from the globers. In other words, the Black Swan leaves it so dead that if you attempt to defend it, you just bury it even further. So there's no coming back from that. What are you going to do? Make the horizon physical again? Go back to telling us how the math shows the physical horizon blocking stuff, and argue about feet and inches values that physical horizon we've debunked is blocking boats and buildings?
Yeah.
That's never going to happen again, ever.
Yeah, there's another thing that they do. That Rachel with 5 zeros, she's kind of on the fence. She's kind of, well, some days I think it might be flat, other days I'm not so sure. So she's clearly torn between like one good and one bad side, and she hasn't worked out her position yet. But what I've noticed is there's a tactical play going on. She's putting out videos basically saying, well, this seems to support that it might not be a sphere. And then another one says, this maybe indicates it might be a sphere. And she's literally genuinely on the fence. What's actually happening is everybody on the Blurther side, all the low-hanging fruit, they're all going over there and gaslighting her, but she doesn't realize she's being gaslit. They're overtly lying to her face. They're like Rusty, the robot slayer, or whatever his name is. He did a video where he showed the vomit comet and he showed the collapse in density tower, and he was asking her questions. And I asked him, because he claimed that the video he showed was an experiment, and I asked him what was the independent variable. Now, in his video, he said the independent variable was switching gravity on and off because it was the zero-G plane. But in comments to me on Rachel's video, where it never gets seen again, he admitted that the independent variable was the plane falling out the sky. So in his video that was used to influence Rachel, he told it was gravity, but in admission to me, he admitted it was the plane falling out the sky, and Rachel doesn't see it yet.
Yeah, plane falling out of the sky. Excellent. I'm glad you've mentioned this, because earlier we discussed, or I raised the fact that he said switching gravity off. That was how he phrased it. Well, switching gravity off. So when you're falling out of the sky, you're achieving gravity off. That's zero. Falling at very fast rate, that's actually gravity off. Why? Well, because when you're not moving at all, you've got a 1 attributable to you. 1G. Not moving at all, that's gravity on. Falling through the sky at vast rates, that's gravity off. No, you've just taken this description and an arbitrary assignment of a downward vector force when you're not moving and its elimination when falling at a vast rate, which is absurd, and telling somebody that that's you switching gravity off. No, your assumption is that there's a downward vector that's in place when nothing's moving, and that when moving at a vast rate you've negated that assumption. What a load of crap.
Yeah, but the worst part of it is, in his video, he's trying to make Rachel think that gravity's being switched off. But in his comment to me, in Rachel's video, he admits that the independent variable, because he claimed it was an experiment, was actually the plane falling out of the sky. Rachel sees the video, doesn't see his admission in comments to me. So when I pointed out the comments of Rachel showing Rachel that he was deliberately and overtly being dishonest with her, I'm hoping that she realizes that he's saying one thing in his video and admitting something else where he knows it's not going to get seen. And I'm hoping she sees that he's basically lying to her because he wants to persuade her to go back to the ball. But Rachel's like, well, how do I know which one to believe? And I'm like, apply scientific method. Don't make it personal. Don't make it about me or him or Nathan Oakley or Bob or whoever. Apply scientific method. I've told her the independent variable is the presumed cause. When you tickle it and it starts laughing, then you prove that that was the cause. And if you tickle it and it doesn't start laughing, then you prove that it was not the cause when you thought that it was. So you got to apply independent variable. And then when you do that, you can't then say it was something else by inference. It's defined. So I'm trying to get her to get into scientific method so that she can weed out the wheat from the chaff. But again, if you want to go into her latest video, Rachie with 5 zeros, go into her latest video, look into her comments, give the girl some encouragement, because she's got about 15 blurter trolls that are all telling her that she's dumb. Now, whether she's dumb or not is kind of irrelevant. The point is that she's not applying scientific method, and she's not getting enough support from our side for whatever reason. Let her know that we're there, and that we realize that she's being gaslit by blurter trolls, because it is tactical. It is tactical intelligence warfare or information warfare, and it needs to stop because it's overtly dishonest.
Yeah, I don't see it that way. I see it as misery likes company, and they're in misery because they've found this out and don't like it. That's why they fight against it. It's not like they don't know the Earth is flat. We've told them, we've given them everything they could ever need, and it's not enough because they don't want it to be flat. Well, therefore, they go after people and try and convert them back to their faith, because that will make them feel better. So it's them sharing their pain as opposed to some covert intelligence manipulation as you've described. But you're a conspirator a lot of the time, and you expand these things out into the preposterous and absurd.
No. I resent that claim. I see the behaviour, and I see what you describe as. What did you describe it as? What was the phrase you used? Misery what?
Likes company.
Misery likes company. I see it as folie à deux. I see it as like the scenario where a husband and wife have a tragedy where they lose their firstborn child, and because they can't accept it, they continue carrying that life on with that child, even though the child's not there. They live in a delusion. Well, I see that mother and father, although they are victims, they are living a life of a delusion, and they are both supporting each other to do it. So where you see it as one way, I see it as folie à deux, in the sense that they are both holding each other's willy whilst they're grieving. That's how I see it. But I see it as the conspiratorial part, where they then go and gaslight people that are asking legitimate questions to try and scare them into thinking that they might be daft and getting this wrong. That's the bit that does go beyond for me. And I just think it's outrageous that, well, she's in a position where she's vulnerable. She can't perceive what's going on. And I look at it and go, they're fucking lying to you, Rachie. Literally lying to your face, but you don't see it yet because you think they're being polite. It's like pissing down your back and telling you it's raining. That's what they're doing.
Yeah. But I see them in the comments, and now I view them in a very different way. You know, at the start of this path that I'm on now, I thought it was intimidating, you know, and them trying to pressure me, or like you're describing with Rachie. Now I don't see it that way at all. I see it as them coming and trying to convert people because of their own cognitive pain. They're struggling with it. Now you say folie à deux, they're sharing a fantasy or sharing delusion, and I agree with that too. But, you know, your scenario is very appropriate when you describe somebody losing a child. This is their child. The globe was their baby, and they've lost it. Now they want to share in the fantasy still, even though it's dead.
I think both of you are right. I think Anthony's right because he's judging the behavior. And I think Nathan's right because he's also judging their behavior. And some have to do what Nathan says. It's the only way they could squish it, get the pain out, is to fight it. And Anthony's right because they're just victims of losing their baby. I mean, they're just like, wow.
The reason why Nathan's incorrect, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but it's because if they were all in their little groups like they are when they go on to, say, Gem Panda's server, and they were just within their little groups, then that would be okay, because I can understand their pain, because that's their church, isn't it? Gem Panda's server is their church, in the same way that they criticize us for Nathan's being our church, or 24/7 Discord our church. I get that if they were limited to just that. But when they go beyond that and they spread their wings and they start influencing people that are clearly new to the topic. Now, wherever she's at in her journey, she's working it out herself. That's brilliant. But the fact that they will overtly lie to her face by saying on the one hand in the video it's gravity, and then saying it's not gravity, it's the falling out of the sky of the plane, that is where it goes beyond simply their own delusion, and it becomes conspiratorial because they're trying to deceive people overtly. And that's the division for me, where it becomes from innocent to intentional.
But
that's why you know it's a religion.
Group, that's the third group. They're agents and they're trolls. So it's not the one that's just trying to fight the pain anymore. It's now he's become an agent.
I don't think it's that. I don't. I think
you don't want. Sorry.
Just. I don't think it's intentional. I don't.
So how could you explain in the video he says it's gravity, but then in messages underneath where no one sees it, he admits that it's not gravity? How would you explain that if it's not intentional?
Or cognitive dissonance?
Because it's one of the Right. It's one of the cognitive dissonance tools that they use to live on a ball. He believes that.
Does
They
he though?
hold two positions simultaneously.
Well, I
that are
don't
in
know.
opposition.
I'm not speaking to his intent, but I could argue it the other way, and it would just be as valid.
No, you can, and I take your point. I don't disagree with that, and I think that your point is it is valid. You could ascribe malice to what he's doing, but this is where John would then say, "Don't ascribe to malice that which can be explained with what's the word?
Stupidity." With that, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you first and foremost to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's live show possible. If you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Also, below this video, there is a link to get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!
Say you're a commander.
With a name like
back, Nick?
Sleeper Warrior, you're not a private.
Yeah. What the fuck's Nathan? Has he dropped already?
No, he's going to come back.
You have to show now.
Nathan, that was a fantastic ending.
What, stupidity?
Yeah.
Well, actually, that's a bit harsh because I'm hoping that John will now expand on what he was saying, and he's speaking from experience. So, yeah, don't take that too badly.
No, I wasn't. That was a brilliant ending. That wasn't a bad ending at all.
Yeah, you haven't followed what I've just said. Go ahead, John.
Right. I was saying that it's not about intelligence. It's about, I would think, more about morals and whether you're willing to accept paradoxes and contradictions as truth. I would disagree with John about stupidity. I think it's a moral position.
I think that people are so different that all of it could be true. There are agents, there are people who are stupid, there are people who are, like what you say, cognitive dissonance at some stage of it. We can't just have a cookie cutter and say it could only be this one thing.
Some people just like cool stories, man.
I don't know why you thought it wasn't a great ending, Nathan. Do you want to explain that? I thought it was fab.
No, what I'm saying is, John was about to launch into detailing something that contradicts that. So we're saying don't attribute to malice what you can ascribe to stupidity. Well, he's saying no, it's not stupidity, it's cognitive dissonance, which is very different. So I'll give you an example. There's my 19,000th subscriber was a guy called Pentakiller, I think he's called. I can't pronounce it. Nevertheless, he's all over the comments, right? He's totally addicted. Wonderful, great. Keep watching, my friend. Thank you for subscribing. Anyway, he's declaring things like the drift that munitions experience in the military. Well, the drift is Coriolis effect, Earth turning underneath bullets, right? They're having to compensate for Coriolis effect, according to their claim. Well, this is a guy that's saying, with burden of proof reversal fallacy, that we should disprove drift, disprove Earth curve. This is the guy in the comments, right? It's like, I caught him and said, here we go. You're telling us to disprove Coriolis effect and prove we're not spinning. And here you are claiming Earth turns underneath bullets. So, what does he do in, I don't know, a 3-day period later, when I bring that back up because he's there demanding that we disprove Earth spinning? What does he say? Well, I'm not suggesting that Earth turns underneath because I have a cut and paste comment. You know, Earth claims we have 15 degrees an hour drift as Earth turns underneath things not attached. That does not happen. Nothing's drifting away at 1,000 miles an hour on the equator. That clarifies their position. Earth's supposed to be turning underneath to cause Coriolis effect. Coriolis effect is Earth turning underneath, stuff not attached. That's what it is. And they deny it. No, we don't claim that. Yeah, you do. Here you go. I've caught you. Took a screenshot in case the guy continues to lie. and I can shame him for his lies. Now, at that point, they're lies because they aren't recognising the cognitive dissonance, holding a position where Earth doesn't turn underneath stuff, because we don't observe it. And also, why aren't you accounting for Coriolis effect at the military? Because they're seeing Earth turned underneath bullets, aren't they? No, but that's now your claim. Both positions, Earth not turning underneath, Earth turning underneath. Well, to hold both positions is to be in cognitive pain. And then deny to me when I smile and wink at them in the comments. All right, how quickly we forget that you've claimed Earth does turn underneath bullets, right? And then they just deny and tell me that I'm an idiot. And you're like, yeah, that's your pain. Your cognitive pain. That's all it is. Share it with me.
Yeah. I had a genuine guy that was saying to me, like, can you explain to me why a brick falling out the sky and a tennis ball falling out the sky both fall at the same rate? And I said, of course, it's to do with how far away from equilibrium they are in the medium that they're in. I said, but they're both that far away from equilibrium that this is an issue on scale. And he called me a moron. So then I explained to him, if you did it in water, one wouldn't fall out the sky at all. The tennis ball would rise. And if you did, and the brick would fall a lot slower. Why is that? Because water's somewhere in between. And I tried to explain it. And in the end, I had to use the equivalent position of why can't I see superfluid helium on Earth? And obviously the answer is because it only seems to exist at very, very, very cold temperatures. If you're miles further away from that very, very cold temperature, you can't get superfluid helium. But if you can get to that temperature and we can create it in a lab, then you can create superfluid helium and it does some interesting stuff. But does that mean that it doesn't exist because we can't create it? And of course not. You're just miles away from the temperature. Same with a football game. I can't see the game of football from here. Why not? Because you're a mile away from the stadium. Get to the stadium. So I'll be back.
No offense, Sleeping Warrior, but you messed up when the guy asked you, how come they fall at the same rate? You should have said they don't. They literally don't. They're of different densities. The brick will fall at a faster rate. If you have a high enough distance, you'll appreciate that.
Nathan, can you let Meekin into the call? He wants to join.
I haven't seen him try to join. I kept seeing it saying somebody wants to join, but I just didn't see it pop up to let him in. I don't know how.
Right, I just said he's saying. I'm sorry, sis. Ask that question again.
Me?
Yeah. I was just responding to Meekin in the background. What was your question?
You messed up when that guy asked you the question. You messed up with your answer. You should have, stopped him right there and said your premise is flawed. They do not fall at the same rate, even in air.
Well, they do fall almost at the same rate when they're miles away from equilibrium. I know that there's an argument some ways over the other, and the air resistance affects it.
Adam, I've got you in on Skype because I didn't know what's going on, but there's a conversation going on. If you can just bear with %.
Hello,
Adam and Sleeping Warrior.
Hi there.
Hey there, Meekin.
But I mean, even I wouldn't even say like miles from equilibrium. You could have like a drop test of a couple hundred feet or so, and appreciate that they fall at different rates because they're different densities.
They seem to. The problem is you need massive amounts of research to do that, and with really tall vacuum chambers and really tall. I mean, they seem to. I'm not saying they do or don't. I don't really know. I've seen it go both ways, where some people say they fall at exactly the same rates, some people say they're different rates. I'm not sure what they actually do. There seems to be many factors that influence it. But you are right. There is a disequilibrium point to make there. But I just wanted to demonstrate that he couldn't scale because his arguments were devoid of scale. And if we get scale wrong, you know how much we get criticized if we say scales and we don't account for scale. It's outrageous, right?
And I agree with you on the scale thing. And I'm saying, like, instead of scaling it to another medium to water, I'm saying scale it, just distance with maintain the same medium of air and just increase the scale just, twice the distance, for instance, and you'll appreciate that there's a different rate of fall.
Well, there is, but the problem with air is obviously that if you're falling through air, the density is getting more and more dense and you slow down. I remind myself of Felix Baumgartner's Red Bull stratospheric jump, where he jumped out the plane or the capsule and he was up to about 800 miles an hour in a couple of seconds. But as he started getting through the atmosphere and he was falling towards Earth, getting closer to the ground, he started to slow down from 800, and in the end he got down to 120 miles an hour. That's a massive jump. 800 down to 120, then he pulled his parachute and landed. If the gradient continued to increase its density, to the point where it became gradually as dense as water, there would come a point where he would stop and he would eventually turn back round and start accelerating the opposite way. I used that against Fight the Flat Earth in his thing when he said that if he basically tried to use it against me, that things would slow down in the atmosphere. And when I pulled that on him, he was like, but you are right in air. But remember that the air's got a dynamic nature. It's continuously changing from point to point to point. So that's a factor that we've got to consider. Wow, that was a conversation killer.
And he was. Can you hear us okay, Adam?
Yeah, I've got you now, boys. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we hear you.
Wouldn't let me in. I'm not
It's
sure
great
why.
because you were rumpusing the whole conversation when you joined. Unintentionally, of course.
No, my audio was set up incorrectly for Skype, that's all.
He can't hear us, can he?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah,
Yeah,
everything's
loud and
cool.
clear.
It's all cool now. It's all good.
Now that everybody can hear each other, can we get on with it?
Let's get it on.
Get on with what? We are getting on with it.
We are getting on
I think
with
he's
it.
forgot the
Adam,
instructions.
we're going to get on it right now. Hey, Adam.
Yes, sir.
Adam. Get stuff.
Nah. How was your wingies?
They were outstanding, as usual. Thank you very much.
On the show today, Quantum Eraser, we were talking about the importance of science, shock horror, and Anthony was explaining that a good grounding and understanding of how a claim that a plane falling out the sky is switching off gravity, therefore an independent variable, it isn't valid if you understand what science is. So for the audience's benefit, check out the most recent Ballbusters. It's currently on Quantum Eraser's channel. I'll repeat it on Saturday this week. But yeah, check it out. There's been dropping anchor, I think is the term you use. We're going to drop anchor on this subject. People need to understand this stuff to understand how they've been swindled into believing that they're on a sphere. And back in the day for us as flat earthers, we were told, you're a science denier if you think the earth's flat. And nothing could be further from the truth. They don't have any science. It's none for the sphere.
Yeah, we
We're
were
going to
talking
drop
about
anchor on
Rachie
part
and the
2
5
starting on
zeros.
Tuesday. Oh, goodness. We're going to drop anchor on part 2 on Tuesday. We're going to, it's the second part, so we'll drop anchor there for a week or so. And then part 3, drop anchor. And then part 4, drop anchor for a couple weeks. Follow?
As it should be. Very important.
I think we might need to change that phrase though, Nathan. Drop anchor, because every time I hear drop anchor, especially when John says parts as the next word, I always think from Little Britain where he says, "I'd like to drop anchor in Pooh Bay." If you're an English guy, you'll get that. Nathan gets it.
Yeah. Very good. But it speaks to your point, Anthony, which is that, you know, if Rachie's fairly green to this subject, then a good grounding in science and what science isn't will get you a long way.
Yeah. She doesn't realize the magnitude of the independent variable definition. It's a massive point because they always ascribe gravitation instead. Like no matter what you manipulate, they'll just infer gravitation was Newtonian, and they'll completely ignore Einstein. They'll completely ignore the definition for independent variable, and they'll just do what the fuck they want. That's literally what they do. So I've tried to warn her.
She needs to stop hanging out with ballers. That's what she needs to do.
Look at what's his face, Spurs Chemo. He spends all of his time with ball earthers, right? He doesn't spend enough time with like people on our side, so he gets cornered into stuff that he could avoid if he just knew a little bit more. He's like, it's like he knows the stuff, he forgets the stuff, he doesn't have enough conversations with us, and then he gets cornered, and it's like, Spurs, all you had to say there was da da da, and he's like, I know, I'm just trying to appease them. I'm like, yeah, but you're letting them think that they're winning all the time by not killing them when you could have done.
That's the bad effects of chemotherapy.
Yeah, it tends to kill a lot of healthy cells and only like a limited amount of the faulty cells.
You're also talking about a guy who was trying to debunk pressure.
He's dropped that point now. I think he doesn't mention it anymore, does he?
Give it a break.
I tried to tag team with him and Jim Pandas, and then he went off the reservation, and I had to abandon the ship. They were talking
Yeah,
about
sorry, I gotta go.
planes.
Bye.
I can't keep up with you, Matt.
Yeah, they were
Panda,
talking.
Did you
guy
get
who
off?
always shows up
They were
on
talking
ladies'
about.
night.
Get off the reservation, or did you abandon ship? Which one is it? I'm confused with your metaphors.
Well, he can't drop anchor anymore.
Okay,
thanks to
this is what happened. So, he was talking about when you're in a plane, right? The horizon. And they were talking about I guess the degree. What is it? The artificial horizon and everything. And I'm like, well, if the ground is beneath your feet, right, and the plane has to angle up for thrust, then of course the horizon would be a few degrees off, right? And that's what I thought the point he was trying to make, but he's like, no, the plane would have to be pointed at the horizon to fly, and I left.
Indeedy.
Well, this makes a lot more sense now since Adam came on and told Huey about wingies. Now we're getting flap because of the horizon.
Terrible.
Terrible, but much needed.
Where is QE? I thought he had something. Came on like he was going to say something. I don't hear nothing.
Oh, not as good as Anthony's show ending statement, but I had to throw it out there, Nathan.
Yeah, it was perfectly timed. I genuinely forgotten the word as well. I was like, what was the word he uses? Is it stupid? I didn't want to say that because in case it was wrong.
I was wingies.
Just a quick one. While we got a bit of a flat moment, I was on Gem Panda's server and they're arguing about refraction. What is refraction?
It depends.
That's 21.
So to refract.
So how far? Sorry. So
The
how
answer
far we see?
To diffract is to refract is to deviate from straight, depending on what you're describing. Now, when they say refraction, that would be globe believers, are invoking something called terrestrial refraction, which is a mathematical value at the rate of the radius. Their refraction is terrestrial refraction. To refract is to deviate from straight.
Perfect. Thanks for that.
Just be aware that they will conflate between the two terms willy-nilly. When they say refraction on their model, doesn't mean it's the same in real world. So they will conflate between refraction on their model, which is it's a fixed 7/6R, and it's a curve at all times. They will conflate between the two models when they want to apply things like towering or stooping or whatever refraction that they want to apply, mirages. And they will let you think that 7/6R is the same as towering, stooping, because they will collate them all together. But that 7/6R, it's a defined term. It's one of those things that they conveniently forget when it suits them, but conveniently apply when it doesn't. And what it does is it allows you to perceive that refraction can be bloody anything. Yet it's limited and defined on their model. So don't let them use towering, stooping, and all those things. Get them to apply 7/6R and keep it at that, because that is their model. Because otherwise it just becomes infinite refraction and it can be concaved.
Yeah, and I was asking him to expand on it, and he wouldn't expand on it. I was even giving him, I said, "You're the teacher, I'm the student. Can you expand on it? You can't just say refraction." That's all he was saying to me, refraction. I was like, "What? Yeah, what is refraction? What is it?" And he wouldn't expand.
It's the same tactic they use with gravity. Like, what's gravity? Like, they'll just go gravity, refraction. They'll squawk it at you as like it's a mother to a child, and they'll just apply it willy nilly because it's their mathematical correction to get round the problem that they've got. So they just go refraction, and they'll apply anything. So just get them to define it, and they can't because they can't apply 7/6R. They always want to apply stooping or towering. That's not their model. That's real world. So it's a conflation between the two terms, and they do it dishonestly to confuse you.
Yeah, 100%. I had to leave the server as well because I can't. I'm getting thick listening to it. Some of the conversations are just dire. Absolutely learning nothing.
Called a bait and switch. So what they'll talk to you, often with a very educated tongue, about optical effects. And they're real. You know, there are these effects. You can observe them in nature. And they often are down to light deviating from straight. So you can call it refraction. However, as Anthony's just correctly identified, what they're actually going to use in their model when they assert sphere Earth is based on R, the radius value. Now, in standard form, 7/6R. So that's called standard refraction. It's standard terrestrial refraction. So terrestrial refraction in standard form is 7/6R. Again, as Anthony's correctly identified already, they can change that value to whatever they like, but they always require R. So globe Earth refraction in any guise is going to require R. That's the detail you need to know. So when they say refraction, they mean an R-based refraction in all instances, because that's globe Earth, standard terrestrial, whatever you want to call it. That's their refraction. Once you understand that, and you get into the slightly more advanced arguments, admittedly, of things like the black swan, and they say, well, why is the horizon beyond the physical geometric limitation that you assert with your globe model? They say, well, it's refracted. Again, they're going to be refracting it at the rate of an R value that's derived from a physical horizon. So upon understanding that their refraction is also based on an R value, they require a physical horizon to move the horizon, leaving them in a paradox. Just wanted to slip that in there mainly for audience members, but if you follow
let me slip this one in as well. The minute they assume R, that's the moment where they curve the straight line. That's the key bit. So assuming R, standard refraction 7/6R, curvy lines.
Then the conversation went on to what is level, and they were saying level is curved. And then I got up the Oxford Dictionary, and it clearly said the opposite what they said. And they're still arguing, oh, I'm stupid. I'm thinking, what?
So what they're doing there is, because there's a definition in Merriam-Webster's dictionary that says that it's equal distances from a single point. Obviously, that involves the circle, right? What they do is... What they do is, I'm gonna get something on screen. Oh, you're not gonna be able to see it. If you type into Google perspective illustrations, you'll see this, and then click images. You'll see this thing, this shape, and it is like circular, cylindrical thing. And from one angle, it looks like it's casting a shadow of a circle on the wall because you're looking at length on. But from another angle, it's casting a shadow that's square because it's cylindrical, but it's giving you the perception of a square. And what they're doing is they're creating an alternative perspective to interpret the same thing, a line. But there's an objective reality. From one perspective, you can argue that there's a line that's curving because it's the equal distance to the center point, but they can call that level. But from the other perspective, which is our perspective, that it's a straight line. It's only when you have an objective third perspective where you can work out what the reality is. So from either perspectives, each one could be true, but is there an objective truth? And the answer is a straight line never curves. That is, by definition, a straight line. It's not a curved line. Otherwise, words can mean anything. Hot can mean cold, fast can mean slow, in can mean out, yes can mean no. There's no end to the equivalence that you can apply that to. And obviously that would be manifestly stupid and absurd, and you can't let them get away with it.
Well, that's true, and you're right. It is absurd, because to assert it is a nonsense contradiction. But by the same token, this guy's saying, well, they do assert it. So how do you tie them to straight being straight? Well, I'll give you that answer, because there is a way of doing that. You ask them what a tangent is. Is everyone aware what a tangent is?
It's the straight line that appears to meet the edge of a circle.
Right. That line, under no circumstances, can be bent. Tangent's straight. And it's required...
So why do they say that? Why are they defending that? Why can't they just put their hand up and say, yeah, it's wrong?
You're asking what you're asking is why at that point would they experience cognitive dissonance? Don't worry about that bit. Just laugh and smile and welcome them to flat Earth if you want.
Annoying.
Yeah, if you want to poke the bear.
Yeah.
Welcome them to flat Earth. Point out their cognitive dissonance. But ultimately speaking, at that point, that's where you've got them, because they need a tangent. Why? Well, because they're performing geometry. That's what they're asserting. Their claim is Earth geometry. with tangents to physical geometric spherical horizons.
Just to push that one step further, Nathan says at that point, sit back and smile. I want to say at that point, not only sit back and smile, but appreciate that they're the parents that have recently had a tragedy with their firstborn child, because their globe model is that child that's died. And from that moment on, they are living out that lie as though the child is still with them. It's called folie à deux. When they apply that principle where they continue to curve that straight line, that's their delusion. And there's nothing you can do to teach them because they just refuse to accept it publicly. But in private, they probably will accept straight lines are straight. But publicly, they don't do it. So sit back and enjoy it, like Nathan said.
So just like in that movie, they're keeping their baby alive, the ball.
Correct.
Got it now.
Yeah, and that's their pain.
There.
It's not them being shills, not controlled opposition. A delusion they want to keep alive through the cognitive pain of holding a position that is untrue alongside one that has been demonstrated to them as true. They want to hold both.
Well,
you can't.
Well, let's not jump together. So when they go onto other people's channels like yourself and they start like gaslighting you to convince you that straight lines can be curved, I would argue that that's intentionally dishonest because they know straight lines are not curved, but Nathan gives them the benefit of the doubt because he applies that principle, which is do not ascribe to malice that which can be explained with stupidity. I say there's only so many times that you can point out they're stupid before you've got to say these guys are delusional. I'm at that point where they're delusional. Nathan's given them the benefit of the doubt because he's being mild and meek-mannered in his old age. I'm like, I want to strangle you guys. You are lying to people.
Anthony's older than
that's where I'm at. I'm at that stage as well.
Oh, we got it. We got one. David, the Truth Goliath.
I tried to say
Mr.
to Neil.
Mr. Refraction Educator is in our midst asking me what Snell's law is. Let's ask you, David, the Truth Goliath. Come on and educate us on refraction.
While he's finding his way to the mute button, Neil asked earlier where quantum eraser was, but the conversation that was more interesting struck up. So I didn't get to say this, Neil. I was saying what he's doing is he's watching the back chat. He's basically got a fishing rod out, right? He's being very quiet. And now he's got one.
Okay.
David, the Truth Goliath. You just train wrecked yourself by appealing to Snell's law. Do you even know what it is, Numpty? I can tell you don't right now. You're already compromised. You don't know it yet. So come on in, share your pain. You're already in. Come off mute. Come on. Educate us.
And if you do come off mute, we're going to experience your folie à deux with your friends because you're going to all be living your delusions out together.
Right. When he does come off mute, I've listened back to a few of the trimmed out sections, right? I just want to hear QE and this guy. Try and contain yourself. Get it all out now, Armin.
That's a copy.
Get it all out now.
Affirmative, Master Nathan.
No.
You better say that again for Alwyn's benefit.
I said, get it all out now before they get into it and you desperately want to get over the top of a nice pause that we could do with having.
Yeah. Oh.
So what's happening, Arwyn, is John's cast his fishing line out and he's got a little fishy that's swimming around the bait. If he takes the bait and comes in, Nathan's saying, when there's a pregnant pause, don't intervene. So I've said, okay, roger that. And we're all acknowledging it. But you've only just come into the conversation. So if it happens, don't interrupt the pregnant pauses.
It's got to get some better bait on that line, though.
I don't know.
He won't come in, though, will he?
He's here. He's here. He's just not answering us. This is chit chat.
Yeah.
Filler.
That's essentially the same thing.
We're the ground bait.
Who is not answering?
It's called David the Truth Geo something.
Oh.
Elias.
Who's David in that scenario and who's Goliath? Are we Goliath?
Depends on your perspective.
Yeah.
There could be two truths there, but only one objective truth.
Depending on any perspective either. How about a mathematical formula for entropy? So you want to immediately divert away. You're going from the fire into the furnace with that little maneuver, but we're going to hold you to educating us on refraction first. Then we'll move on to second law of thermodynamics. Well, I'll beat you over the head with a Louisville Slugger, now spiked.
Coax
It
him in.
sounds like a red herring
Come on, David,
destruction. That
come
doesn't
off
it?
mute. Let's go. I got stuff to do.
I was more interested in the first statement. So he said something about Snell's law. What was that, David? Snell's law. That's new on me. What's that?
Come on, David.
Now you
he's
got
a
the
jet.
right bait. What is
He's a
Snell's law?
jet tank.
Yeah, fishy, 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 fishy.
Don't let him know that declaration was bait. I don't know what Snell's law is. What are you talking about? So what's this Snell's law? I don't know.
I don't know. I'm asking too.
I don't know.
What if I
What's
said
Snell's
it
law?
didn't apply? Would you reckon that might work?
Come on, David. Tell us what Snell's law is.
I think you guys might be taking.
Oh, someone else is taking.
Go ahead, Kiwi.
He says, "Give me 5. Be right back. BRB. Why you jumping into wiki?"
Yeah, he's not coming back.
I think you guys might be taking the wrong tact here with this guy. Maybe you should be acting like you don't want him to come in, like that you're terrified.
Playing the over psychology.
Get freak out of here, David. The truth.
I'm so scared that David might come in here. What should we do? Should we call it a day, Nathan, and go home quick?
Link it to what he's made a statement about. I don't know. I'd rather not talk about Snell's law. It's not something I'm very well versed in.
Maybe you could ask him a more appealing question.
That was really
what is
good.
his opinion on perspective?
Perspective.
Yeah.
Apparently he needs 5.
All right.
Maybe we could ask him, how could we be begging a question if we didn't even ask a question?
Oh, good. That's coming. That's coming. The numpty clips are a little backed up right now, but it's coming. Be patient.
When I read that on the page, I don't know why the feeling I got was anger, but that was the first thing that went through me. I was like, that's so annoying. You know what I mean?
That's what I felt listening to it on Ladies' Night.
Can anybody give me the link for Ladies' Night? I'll try finding Gem Panda in Ladies' Night. I wanted to hear how he was speaking. I could not find him anywhere in the 4-hour video.
Yeah, I know it's hard to tell him from ladies in general.
No, I know his voice. He couldn't have been in very long.
Well, if you wouldn't have bailed out of the war room, you would have had the link and the timestamp.
Can someone? Yeah, but in the
God,
war
please
room,
no.
that's Brian's. Yeah, there's people in there
God,
that I'm not
please
prepared to
no.
associate with.
Just go in there and get the link and get the hell out.
No, because it encourages naughty people to be naughty.
David, you there? Save me from this, please.
He left the chat.
Oh, God, he ran away.
I knew he wasn't going to come in.
That
Can't
answers
share
your
his
question
pain.
on who's
He has to
David
run.
and who's Goliath.
Right, this is where, as fishermen, we look over to the other banks and go, that was you pissing around with your radio. Shut up!
Yes. It's going to turn out like a scene out of Monty Python where we all blame each other.
So I had a question about terrestrial refraction, actually. Who even came up with that? Is that something that existed before, like, Earth curve calculators? Like, did somebody... Because I wasn't familiar with it ever until, being in this lovely arena.
I don't know. It's a good question.
I think their terrestrial refraction came up as a grassroots doublethink solution to
Oh,
a
I totally
problem
agree.
that simply wasn't being addressed.
I absolutely agree with that. I was going to state that, but I chose to say I don't know because I don't know the history. Who first invoked terrestrial refraction? Yes, absolutely. It'll be as Alwyn states.
Mick West from Metabunk claims that it's often cited in engineering books, and on his Metabunk website, he does give some reference to where they used 3/4, and then there was some historical debate over whether it was enough or was it too much, and then it ended up being 5/7, and then in the end it ended up being 6/7, or 7/6 in the end, or whatever it was. There is some debate over how they formulate it with a standardized thing. However, it's all he also admits and accepts that they just assume are.
So what you're saying is the standard refraction is attributable to Mick West. Is that real? Are you kidding me? He's part of the narrative in terms of he developed standard refraction at the rate of 7/6R.
No, he doesn't. No, he cites the historical disagreements between surveyors, between a standardization of refraction, because they couldn't agree on what refraction was, and they generally generalized it with a generalization. And they were arguing over at what rate, though. Should we give 10%, 20%, 60%, 32%? And why should we give that rate? So there's no real consensus on it, but they found what he describes as something that they consider to be a consensus. And he cites it from some element of surveying things. And he cites it. I'm just citing Mick West.
Okay. So it's not him.
Right. It's probably more of an average than a consensus then. Really?
Yes.
I mean,
reluctant.
Because obviously, anytime you go and measure this, it's going to attempt to measure it. With your premise of having a curve there to begin with, you're obviously going to get a different result every time. And it wouldn't surprise me if people for decades did kind of talk about this in certain circles, but yeah, maybe it is Mick West that really popularized
came
it.
up just as dark matter came up through math in order to justify something not working out. So that's really how it's born, and it's bound to be conceived by multiple people in multiple periods and then just left within the exercise until somebody decides, okay, this is important enough to make it a thing now. So
guys, hello.
It's the same as what they did with Marconi when he'd got a successful transatlantic radio ping, and that couldn't happen on a sphere. So they made a mathematical adjustment where they invented the ionosphere that didn't exist before, and they had to correct it because it can't happen on a sphere. So it's like they'll just mathematically adjust for everything, including the southern star trails.
But that's correct, and that's an alternative example that would explain the origin story of the ionosphere, which I'm not disagreeing with, but I'm saying this guy's asking, what's the origin of terrestrial refraction? And the answer is, I don't know, and neither do any of my panel by the looks of things.
I am
in surveying, in particular geodetic surveying, it became a mainstay. It is a mainstay in surveying because when they're at a high elevation in geodetic surveying, they're looking a long distance, and depending on the weather, what they're going to see will change, as you know, from could change within an hour. So. That's why it became a big thing within geodetic surveying. So it was more geodetic surveying, which preassume a globe Earth. That's where that became planar surveying too. Sorry?
Where does it slip in? So, as I understand it, from what you've told me, or what you've researched and presented, I should say, to make it more obvious that it's not just a verbal conversation. Anyway, disclaimers aside, they assume a tangent plane. Well, once they've gathered a datum and drawn a zenith line to a center of a presupposed spherical Earth, at what point are they invoking this rule of thumb, or however the description Anthony gave was? When does it actually get invoked? Employed?
When they realise that it's not. When they realise they're seeing shit they shouldn't see.
Well, hold on. Do you know, Brian? When do they actually apply it, or is it just in the maths that we see and it's just attributed or ascribed to them?
Well, it's applied. You're talking about refraction in particular, Nathan.
Yeah, so you're saying that the roots of terrestrial refraction, now standardized at 7/6R, if that's got its roots in geodetic surveying, then at what point is it applied when they're doing their thing?
Well, what they're going to do is once they have taken their coordinates, they might have to go to a location, and they might be at that high location, high elevation, with geodetic surveying. They might have to go there more than one time to get what they're looking to get, because it could be just down, and they may not even go there at all for a lot of times when they have the opportunity due to weather, because they know it's going to be too much refraction. So they wait for basically the clearest, best, most accurate refractive conditions, and they go there. What they do is they take all the coordinates in Cartesian, which is flat plane coordinates, and then all they do afterwards is just convert that mathematically to fit the WGS84 or NGS80 oblate spheroid datums. So they're always taking it into account within what they're doing. I mean, they'll know from the weather and conditions whether they're wasting their time sometimes going to a location, as they won't see. They know from the conditions they won't see what they need to see. But they don't take any. They don't, when it comes to the final deliberation. The final deliberation is always mathematical from whatever they got to see across a flat plane, mathematically converted to fit an oblate spheroid datum.
When you say what they need to see, when you say what they need to see, what are they looking at, guys? What do they need to see? What is that they are looking at that you say they need to see in clear conditions?
Flat plane. They're looking across a flat plane. That's even the coordinates. They have to use flat plane coordinates. Otherwise they can't do it. So they must use flat plane coordinates. And what they're seeing is refraction across a flat plane. That's what they're seeing.
Right. But then they wouldn't be using terrestrial refraction in that case, right? I mean, you're talking about the actual effect of not being able to see.
Yeah, but that comes in afterwards when they mathematically convert from flat plane to oblate spheroid.
So that's when they can sleep at night, basically.
Well, they have to add, as soon as they add in OR, then they can add in terrestrial refraction after OR. But OR comes first, and that's the
right. But I guess my point is, why would they even do that? Why would they even care? They're just measuring a flat plane, and then they're converting it into a sphere. Like, it really doesn't make any difference at that point. It's only if you go back and say, well, wait, it seems like that observation was too far, and like that. As I understood the geodetic survey from your presentation too, Brian, is that, I mean, you're dealing with such small segments here. Does it even really come into play until, like you said, you put it back together in the map? I guess I don't even know what the point is.
No, that is your point. That's a good question.
Stop, come up with that.
No, you've got your question. That's a good question. So that's what I was trying to establish with Brian. So if you're saying the roots are for terrestrial refraction, otherwise known as standard refraction at 7/6 of the radius value, that they have utilized it based on their averages that they've got, but ultimately they're only going to be drawing out tangent planes, referencing datums, and then measuring it flat with Cartesian coordinates if it's a clear enough day. So in other words, well, that would imply that they're not applying 7/6R. In other words, it's not like, well, they've got a standard day and they say, well, we'll apply standard refraction then, because they're not. They're, according to you, doing it in the clearest of conditions. So at what point do the geodesic surveyors actually apply 7/6R or any other terrestrial refraction rate when they do what they do? It seems so far they don't. It's just used as an excuse when we get to the, I've forgotten who it was speaking now, whoever it was that was just speaking a moment ago points out, when it gets to us applying why something that's supposed to be blocked by the physical geometric sphere edge horizon at a certain feet and inches value, why we've got a bit more or a bit less of it. Well, because of terrestrial refraction. So it's applied now with geometry and maths in the Earth curve calculators, but where do the surveyors apply it, if at all?
What they do, Nathan, is they'll look across a flat plane. They'll realize from whatever amount of tangent planes they've surveyed that they're seeing in a direct straight line way further than you would on a ball. They convert all these to fit an oblate spheroid datum, and then they will say the reason that they can see too far is because of that standard refraction.
I see. So after I see. So they draw a tangent plane.
They have to have OR first.
They do their flat surveying, and then when they're translating it back onto a ball, after assuming a radius, measuring it flat, they then, because they've seen too far on the clear day, have to justify why. And they say, well, we have a standard refraction rate that's also in effect on a clear day. So automatically on a clear day, a certain amount that's previously hidden behind the sphere edge physical geometric horizon is seen when we apply it to a ball after measuring it flat, after assuming a sphere.
Right. So it's only in the moments when they need to justify why the site is too far for the geometry when it is brought up as a concept to justify it.
Yeah, of course. They use it as another correction mathematically to make it back into a sphere.
Right. So then when you're using that same method to engineer flat onto a sphere, when you're doing it in reverse with the globe Earth mathematics, the same refractive value can be applied to justify why something is higher or lower in respect to a physical horizon that they claim is blocking it. Well, the same maths applies, so they just use the same maths. But now we have the origin of why it was originally used, i.e. they've got to give a value when they're measuring it with Cartesian coordinates, flat, and then transposing it back onto a sphere, why it's not matching up with what they actually saw when they measured it.
Yeah, I mean,
Seems like the kind of thing. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I'll go after.
No, it seems like the. Yeah, now I lost it. See, exactly. Go ahead, Brian. I'm sorry.
Stop giving way to each other. Someone drive through the junction. Come on.
It seems that's why it's
they-
optical.
They see refraction when they are they take note of refraction because they have to when they're doing surveying, even planar surveying. That you have to take refraction into account. But what they do is they can't add in standard refraction before the R value. So when they add in the R value, after that they can add in standard refraction, and that allows them to say, yeah, well, that's why we could see so far because of the 7/6R. Now, I'm not saying they go home in the evening. They go home at the end of the day and say that to each other. They just pre-assume all this stuff. Most of them just don't know any different. They just do their job and go home. But I mean, that's what they're doing. You know, they take notice of the refraction they're seeing across a flat plane, and then they convert the flat plane to an oblate spheroid datum, and then they add in standard refraction to account for why they could see what they could see. So,
right, but again,
reason,
that's just the justification. When you say add in, it's really just providing a reason. It isn't necessary in any part of their calculations that they have standard refraction or anything like that. It's more of a thing that they go home and then they're like, wait a minute, should I really be able to see that? Well, of course, standard refraction. It's just not part of
refraction is working off
not part of their work necessarily. It's something that would be derived from the results of their work.
Yeah, derived from the results.
It's just based on the belief. Sorry.
It's back to the clock that you can't see, shouldn't be there. It's a refracted hologram of a clock beyond the sphere edge that isn't seen. Well, all of that's a justification with refractive values because of an effect that's not occurring. In other words, it's not blocked by a sphere edge. Well, why can we see it? It's like, why are we asking this question? Well, because we're supposed to be on a sphere. Oh, yeah, right. So we need to justify why we can see it. As flat earthers, we go, there's a clock. Do you want to know how far it is? 20 miles. End of explanation. None required. But if you think you're on a sphere and you shouldn't see it, then you need to start justifying why you're seeing things you shouldn't. And that's what they do.
Nathan, you used to have that playing out perfectly smooth, like in 10-second clips where you would rattle on the entire complete process of how the ballers actually see that thing that's just there. Remember those times?
Oh, you mean seeing a slightly looming non-standard refraction high in a holographic projection of a clock from behind the now debunked reified sphere edge horizon to make the clock a geometric impossibility on a sphere, but therefore a holographic projection of a clock from behind that sphere edge? No, just a clock at 20 miles if you're a flat earther, and a slightly looming non-standard refraction high in a holographic projection of a clock from behind a Earth curve edge if you're a glober. Nonsense if you're a glober. Realistic if you're just a flat earther, just a clock, right?
We see it because it's there.
Exactly.
They see it is because it's being bent by light around the corner in order for it to seem flat. Very convoluted ball they're living on that seems flattened a lot of the times.
Yeah, and when we got
the Earth itself is a giant conspiracy.
Well, the stage when we got to that stage in debate, it was when we had Mick West literally over a barrel admitting that they assumed R. So all of the justifications for this is because we're on a sphere. Well, why? Why is it the case that you state that we're on a sphere? Well, because I assume we're on a sphere. I.e., we assume R. We already know. We already have R. So because we've already got it, we'll already use it and we'll already assume it's true. That's begging the question. If you're trying to prove you're on a sphere, saying, well, if we're on a sphere radius 3959, that's assuming your outcome. Not by starting with an R value. But at that point, when we're pointing out that it's not reasonable or justified to assume you're on a sphere, and when it doesn't present that way, assume that not only are you on a sphere, that light's bending around the sphere to present things that couldn't be seen if there was something in the way that isn't in the way, therefore what you're seeing is a hologram. You know, none of that's required or justified when you're assuming you're on a sphere in the first instance. None of it's justified. So we say, well, it's not justified. You can't just assume you're on a sphere and justify why it doesn't pad out that way. And they went, yeah, we can. We know we're on a sphere. That was the response. So from that, you get to the black swan argument. It gets one step deeper. Okay, if we're on a sphere, radius 3959 by assumption, then every distance to horizon can be no more than 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. That's where the geometric physical sphere edge horizon, they say block stuff, would be. And it's absolutely fundamental to their model. You've got to draw a straight line, tangent, to it to get R. And if you can't do that because it's bent, as is claimed when you show them the black swan image with the horizon way beyond the geometric capabilities, you've no longer got a tangent, you've no longer got geometry, we're no longer on the sphere model that we knew was being assumed in the first place.
That is correct, but they do still have the added up equator line distance that they can calculate a circle and therefore a sphere from. But yeah, no more actual optical evidence. That's not there anymore. That's correct.
Yeah, but that's
I wonder whoever measured the equator anyway. But that's
what is the equator? An arbitrary position, a midpoint between where the sun moves over the land. Now, that's a lot of assumptions about what the sun is, where it's moving, and a midpoint that's derived by averages being the outside edge of a physical sphere. Well, no, that's like way too many assumptions. It's not a physical location. It's not the outside edge of a sphere. Absolutely preposterous. But they'll just assume it. Like everything. Well, obviously we've already got an equator and we've got southern hemisphere below it and northern hemisphere above it. And it's the outside edge. It's the midpoint. It's the sun going around and us going around it. You know, that's all assumption.
Well, can I give you the ultimate baller excuse? So why would there be so many ball arguments based on presupposing it is a ball? If there wasn't a ball, then have all these people been wasting their times? I'm going to believe that the majority of people have not been wasting their times and just trusted what had been figured out. And that's why everybody presupposes the Earth is a globe. It's all okay.
No, if it's common consensus that ghosts are real, you could make the exact same position with the same nonsense outcome, which is to say, well, would it be the case that everybody would be looking for ghosts and presupposing that they're real when they go out looking for them? And as it happens at the moment, the Western world all think ghosts are real. Well, no, it doesn't make it any more valid. Just because they're assuming it doesn't prove their outcome. That's called begging the question, assuming the outcome. Assuming ghosts are real is no better or worse than assuming Earth's a sphere by presupposition.
Well, ghosts are just expect to see them.
Holy ghosts.
Did you catch that?
They never measured the circumference of the equator. They never did that. They never had to do that. What they did is they started off with a pre-assumption of an R value, and they just calculated it off of that. That's all that happened.
Right.
If you look at the Eratosthenes, what he did, he just done a straight line 500 mile approximation between two locations north to south. Okay, so if you take that and you go across the known map, if you flatten out a map, let's say with the latitude and longitude grid, it's the same distance straight across from, let's just say, 90 degrees south at one side to 90 degrees south at the other side. It's the same distance across that as it would be, let's say, on a curved surface, taken in the curve as it would be on a flat plane. So all he did was basically make a diameter straight across a flat plane, if you want to see it that way. And they tried to make a radius out of what he did, because they say he pre-assumed or used Pythagoras' maths or whatever. But basically all he did was the straight line 500 mile approximation. That's all he did. North and south.
Says it in a lot
so
of
if you look at that, and sorry?
It disclaims it. It says because he already knows he's on a sphere, or based on us being on a sphere. It'll start with this declaration of the assumption of the R value that's being assumed. Earth's already a sphere when he does this nonsense that was debunked at the beginning of the show by 10th Man.
Correct. It starts with we're already on a sphere.
Yeah, but But the thing about it is that, like, we don't even know if he actually did that. He might have just gone 1 mile approximation. It's added in that he pre-assumed he's on a sphere. Right? Like, there's no, like, if we want to talk about Aristophanes himself, if he existed, there's no evidence that he pre-assumed he's on a sphere, other than Wikipedia and places like that.
Indeed.
The point, if you look at the distance straight across using the latitude and longitude lines, if you flatten them out, the longitude line, if you flatten out the map, it's 24,860, I think it is, miles, which is more or less equal to the equatorial or the polar radius of the globe Earth.
Perfect.
So,
with that, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ Panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. Also, below this video, there is a link to get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!